MotoGP is back in Brno and back in action as world champion Jorge Martin in the Grand Prix of Czechia 2025 tips into its second half with round 12 bringing the world's fastest riders back to the jaw-dropping undulation of Brno, which lies a short drive from the Czech Republic's beautiful second city. With the summer break and the beach beckoning, sprint action is next live. It's time for MotoGP. Well, Grand Prix motorcycle racing took place in the old Czechoslovakia, as it was known back then, in 1965 on a street circuit. We first moved to the current layout in 1987. This, the 34th time that Brno has hosted a MotoGP race. And what a track this is. Hard-braking, great overtaking opportunities, fast-flowing sections, high-speed change direction, spectacular undulation. It just has a little bit of everything, doesn't it? The brilliant Brno, back here for the first time since 2020. Turns 1, 3 and 5, the most demanding in the braking zones. Overtaking hotspots, as mentioned, a lot of them, including the climb up into Horsepower Hill. This was, what, 7 long years ago now. What a battle this was. Lorenzo Marquez de Vizioso, a classic back in 2018. Well, at his beloved Sachsenring in Germany, what, 6 days ago, it was Marc Marquez who fired away from pole position, and he made the early running as Pedro Acosta crashed out of top 6 contention early on the factory KTM. He slid off at turn 2. At turn 1, there was plenty of drama, wasn't there? It was Fabio Di Gianantonio and then fellow Italian Marco Bezzecchi both crashed out of second place, which put Alex Marquez, the injured Alex Marquez, up into yet another second spot. Pecco Bagnaia promoted onto the podium, but there is no stopping Marc Marquez in 2025 as he took a 9th MotoGP success, all refarming over the finish line. His viral celebration, which has been watched well over 65 million times on Instagram alone. It has been wet at times on our return to Brno, but thankfully, coming up in just under half an hour's time, it looks like we are set fair for a full dry 10-lap sprint, as Marc Marquez looks set to mount a strong challenge for what would be sprint number 11 of 12 rounds so far. He really has cashed in big style on Sprint Saturday so far this year. As mentioned in the build-up, well, we welcome back Jorge Martin, the reigning world champion, after his long-running injury nightmare. Is that finally over? Martin will go from 12th place on the grid on the factory Aprilia. This morning in Q1 and Q2, well, we had plenty of drama, certainly coming the way of Italian Pecco Bagnaia, who becomes just the 9th rider in MotoGP history to top Q1 and then top Q2 and take pole position. Qualifying pole is all well and good, but Bagnaia wants some big points here as he heads into the summer break. He's on a front row, which is also features Marc Marquez, 83 points clear of brother Alex in the World Championship. There was drama as well for Marc at the end of Q2. Less than a second after Johan Zarco had crashed out of top 6 contention at turn 13, as it looked like he was on course for what would have been career pole 74 in MotoGP with just 2 corners remaining. Marc Marquez distracted briefly by the Zarco incident ahead of him. Well, he too tasted gravel in that penultimate corner. Second place though on the grid will go Marquez. What a front row it is. Bagnaia, Marc in second place. Fabio Quartararo on the factory Yamaha. His 6th front row start in 12 rounds coming up very, very shortly. Over 10 laps. Marco Bezzecchi's had an eventful weekend. He leads row 2 in 4th place. He was down on the floor in Q2 this morning at turn 1. His 3rd crash of the weekend so far. And then 2 outstanding performances on the second row. Joan Mir, 5th fastest for the official factory Honda team. That's his best qualifying in his first top 6 in 37 since the Indian round at the back end of 2023. And Raul Fernandez, just the 4th time he's qualified inside the top 6 in MotoGP. So a couple of surprise names up at the front. Matt Burton Lewis Sotheby then in the commentary box with Jack Appleyard down in pit lane. And we'll pick it up straight away with Jack, actually, because as mentioned, what a performance it was this morning by Raul Fernandez. He came through Q1 in 2nd place behind Bagnaia, and he powered the Aprilia to 6th place on the grid. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Davide Brivio, who is with Jack.
Yeah, he is indeed. Excellent performance from Raul this morning. You've just been speaking to him, Davide. What was said?
Yeah, no, it was good. Probably somehow was also helpful maybe to go through the Q1 to make a good test, let's say, on a qualifying. Yeah, no, he went out. We only had 1 tire because when you come from Q1, so he only go at the end with the soft, and he did a very good lap, I think. So here we are, and yeah, let's see how the race goes, especially for tomorrow, the main race. Starting in a 2nd row, you have much more chance to maybe stay with the top guys and try to follow, and so let's see. Of course, can be a good race.
A lot was made of the test at Aragon of Manu Gonzalez, some of the words of Massimo Rivola, just putting the pressure on Raul ever so slightly, but in recent weeks he's responded. This is arguably the most consistent and best run we've seen of him in Trackhouse colours.
Yeah, no, not really the pressure from Gonzalez test. That was not a big deal from this point of view. But just we started the season with injury and struggling to stay in the top 15, top 10. And then since Le Mans, we had the improvement, constantly in the top 10. Last weekend, Sachsenring was not good, but we discussed about, we talk about, and also to stay focused on what we have, try to use as much as possible what we got in the garage and whatever. So, and yeah, this year, this weekend is turning good, but okay, we have to start the real job now.
Absolutely, this is where the fun begins. Good luck, Davide.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to Davide Brivio. Raul Fernandez, only the 4th time in MotoGP is qualifying inside the top 6. This was all the late drama then at the back end of Q2 this morning.
Yeah, you can see the yellow light panel there coming on as Marc Marquez is already into the heart of the final couple of corners. We immediately asked the question, naturally, given it's often a penalty that comes the way of riders when they crash into a yellow flag zone, that a double long lap penalty comes their way. But you could see the clear evidence there on your screens that Marc Marquez had not passed a yellow flag when he crashed. That is Pecco Bagnaia's parents that Marc Marquez is getting a lift back to the paddock with. Of course, Alex Marquez crashed yesterday afternoon in practice and declined the opportunity to ride back to the pits on board with Pecco's parents. But the Pecco parents were happy in 2 respects. They brought Marc Marquez back to the pits with their son on pole.
He saw the funny side of that, didn't he, when he was looking at the replay inside the factory Ducati garage. What a dramatic sprint Saturday it's been already for Bagnaia then. Pole position number 25 in MotoGP. And as we mentioned, he's just a 9th rider to lead Q1 and then take pole position. A quick summary: Marc Marquez, Buram 2018, Martin, Austria 2021, Bagnaia himself in Emilia-Romagna 2021, Martin in Kota 2022, Gian Antonio Mugello 2022, Mark in Portimao 2023, Alex Marquez in Termas back in 2023, and our most recent one was Luca Marini, Q1 to pole, or topping Q1 to pole in Mandalika nearly 2 years ago. Great to have the world champion back with us, and great to be back in Brno. What a sight that is. It's a sight we have missed. Barely a spare blade of grass to be had. That is a wonderful vantage point there, and that's the stadium section sitting in between turn 7 and 8. You've got to be here early to get a good spot there. But Jorge Martin then getting himself ready for what is going to be just his 3rd race action of 2025. He did the sprint, of course, in the Qatar Grand Prix, and then crashed out of contention in the main Grand Prix in Losail, and we have not seen him since after his long 7-race injury layoff.
Of course, automatically made his way through the qualifying 2 with his performance in a mixed practice session yesterday. Something mixed in terms of the weather. Didn't quite get the ultimate time attack together in Q2, but he is a little out of practice, in fairness to Martins. Of course, not only has he not done any qualifying sessions since Qatar, but of course there's been no real time attack opportunities to practice that over the course of this Grand Prix weekend. And both Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia alluded to that perhaps Pecco Bagnaia did have a little advantage when we arrived into qualifying 2, because he'd just done a couple of time attacks in Q1. Marc Marquez admitted that it was a little bit strange that the first time he was putting that Ducati on the line for a time attack was when he was battling for pole position.
How tough was this weekend to jump back into the fray for Jorge Martin? Well, since he won the World Championship in Barcelona last year, he has done the sum total of 69.9 kilometres of racing in 2025. Only 24 racing laps so far completed by Martin. Marc Marquez has done the most mileage on Saturdays and Sundays in sprint and Grand Prix, 1,220. Just shows how far back Jorge Martin is in terms of seat time in 2025. He's done one of the opening 11 Grand Prix, but it's been some return. Fair play to the Martinator. Just to be in Q2 was a bonus in the tricky conditions yesterday, and to find what a 153.614, just 1.3 seconds back. Pecco Bagnaia, absolutely outstanding job. Let's go back down to Jack on the grid.
Yeah, I have to say, now that I'm stood here alongside Pecco Bagnaia's pole position, looking down at the opening corner, of course, this is the first time I've stood on the grid here at Brno, and I tell you what, it is a long old run down to the first corner. Getting the start here is going to be absolutely crucial, because this has to be one of the longest runs to the first corner, up there with the likes of Catalunya or Mugello, for example. So it's going to be key, especially in the shorter format, to get off the line well, because if you don't, you could be a long way back by the time you reach that opening corner.
Of course, thanks very much for that, Jack. This is the first ever sprint to take place here in Brno. Let's hope, we haven't been here since 2020, let's hope it's been well worth the wait. MotoGP bikes ready to blast around Brno once again in race action. Bagnaia then is the first rider other than Quartararo and Marc in 2025 to find himself starting from the front of the grid. He has so far gone winless in the sprints in 2025. Is that a stat that he can correct over 10 laps coming up shortly?
Of course, so many of the sprints in 2025 have been Marc Marquez dominated. Of course, every sprint has been won by a Marquez, either Marc or Alex. Marc taking 10 of the first 11, Alex winning the other at Silverstone, and by and large they've been 1 and 2 in one order or another. But that might well be a challenge for Alex Marquez today. Of course, was lucky in some respects to even be in qualifying 2 after his crash in practice late yesterday afternoon, where he managed to recover himself back into the top 10 on the final lap of the session. And there were some interesting games at play late in Q2 earlier on today, as everyone was battling around, particularly Bagnaia and Alex Marquez, to be on Marc Marquez's rear tyre. Bagnaia won that particular battle, and Alex Marquez just couldn't get a clean lap together at the end of Q2. The upshot of all of that is that the rider second in the World Championship has to come from the middle of row 3.
Hasn't gone his way so far this week, Alex. A 9th on that Friday was his lowest finishing position on a Friday so far in 2025, and flying away from 8th on the grid is his slowest Saturday qualifying performance of the season so far. Can he rectify that situation in this upcoming sprint? 132 points have been won so far on sprint Saturdays. 129 of them have been taken by Marc Marquez. It's just an imperious record he brings into this latest edition of the short format. Fabio Quartararo, well, he said all weekend, we knew from riders that had tested here previously in Brno that the new surface, the Brno organisers have done a phenomenal job on ironing out so many of the old bumps. It's billiard table smooth, and Fabio Quartararo was always confident coming into this weekend. If you give the Yamahas grip, well, they're going to be in the game, and so far so good for Quartararo. He fires away from the front row in 3rd place.
I guess the question Quartararo is going to be asking himself before this sprint gets underway is just what kind of challenge can he level against the Ducatis on some of the longer straights of this Brno circuit. Sectors 1 and 4 are the areas where the Ducatis have been winning time hand over fist versus the Yamaha. In the twistier infield section, sectors 2 and 3, the Yamaha going very, very well indeed. But of course we term it horsepower hill, the run up from the Schwanz curve of turn 10 up through the final couple of S-bends, and it's around that part of the racetrack where Quartararo might find himself a bit of a sitting duck if he has Ducatis behind him.
It's been a very eventful weekend so far for Bezzecchi, the 26-year-old Italian. on the floor in FP1 in the rain conditions at turn 11 yesterday. A crash yesterday afternoon at turn 3 on some standing water, and then he bailed out on the RSGP, missed his braking marker and ran into the gravel trap at turn 1 in what was that highly eventful Q2 session. Didn't really damage his grid prospects. So Marco Bezzecchi, the leader Aprilia, in 4th place.
Here is the grid then. Pecco Bagnaia for the first time this season on pole from Marc Marquez and Fabio Quartararo. Interesting if that is indeed the tyre choice. Medium for the front row, perhaps just wanting the information ahead of tomorrow's Grand Prix. Bezzecchi with the soft rear from 4th, ahead of Joan Mir and Raul Fernandez, both their best qualifyings of the season. Pedro Acosta 7th, ahead of Alex Marquez and Johann Zarco, who of course crashed with Marc Marquez, seconds apart in qualifying 2. Jack Miller, Enea Bastianini and Jorge Martin on the 4th row. Bastianini and Martin in Q2 for the first time this year. Gian Antonio, a shock exit in Q1. He's 13th, ahead of Pol Espargaro and Alex Rins, with Luca Marini 16th, leading a 6th row, which features Miguel Oliveira and Fermin Aldeguer. 2020 winner Brad Binder has to come from 19th on the grid if he wants to enjoy more Brno success. Taka Nakagami and Ayagura are next door to him. Augusto Fernandez wildcarding for Yamaha this weekend completes your grid of 22.
Hasn't been the dream return to Brno, has it, for KTM star Brad Binder? Only 4 times in his MotoGP career has he found himself lower on the grid than 19th, which will start the sprint and the Grand Prix here tomorrow. Gives you an indication of just how much Binder has found the going tough here this weekend on a track where he won in just his 3rd ever MotoGP start. That all feels like an awful long time ago right now as he fires away from the head of row 7. So it is Bagnaia then on pole position. Unfortunately, this sprint and Grand Prix here in Brno is missing Frankie Morbidelli, a left shoulder injury he suffered a week ago in the wet sprint over in the Sachsenring, has ruled Frankie out of action. Let's go down onto the grid then. It's great to know that Jorge Martin, of course the world champion, back in action. Let's get some thoughts of its crew chief Daniele Romagnoli, who joins Jack.
Yeah, of course, only the 2nd sprint of the year for Jorge. Great to see the #1 back out there in action this weekend. Daniele, how's he feeling ahead of this after such a long break?
Honestly, yeah, I feel very good to be in the middle of the grid. Yeah, we expect something better, but has been not really lucky this morning qualifying. But apart that, he has a good feeling. He likes the bike. I think he can do much better what we've seen in qualification, especially like yesterday in the afternoon, also on the wet. But overall, he's very happy with the bike balance, and he's a good return.
A little bit nervous before jumping on the bike, or all okay?
I don't think so. He's okay. He's conscious of what he can do. You know what he can do also physically, and he's okay actually physically. So not nervous. Actually, much better than Qatar.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Daniele Romagnoli, finally reunited then with his #1 charge, Jorge Martin, who, is fair to say, tasted plenty of success on sprint Saturdays, hasn't he, the 27-year-old Spaniard? Winner of 16 sprints, 30 podiums on the sprint format as well, including his last in Catalonia last year, which was so vital in him capturing the 2024 MotoGP World Championship.
So Marc Marquez makes his way to his number 93 Ducati, out-qualified by Pecco Bagnaia for just the 3rd time this season, in a qualifying session where Pecco Bagnaia really did turn his weekend prospects on their head. With 1 run left of qualifying 1, he was set to start this from 16th on the grid. He was 6th in Q1 when he went out of the pits to start his final run in qualifying 1. I don't think many would have foreseen that he would end the morning on pole position for the first time this season, but it just goes to show why these great athletes never ever give up, and Pecco Bagnaia is in no mood to give up.
In the morning sessions, in the wet yesterday and in the dry this morning, Jack Miller found himself 2nd fastest. What can he do on an afternoon? He goes from 10th place on the grid for the Pramac Yamaha squad. And Joan Mir, well, he had a fantastic Q2 this morning, absolutely superb. The 2020 MotoGP World Champion, of course. His best qualifying since the Indian Grand Prix back at the end of 2023. Only the 2nd time Mir was going to start inside the top 6 as a factory Honda rider. Leading the Yamaha charge, as he so often does, from the front row of the grid is Fabio Quartararo. Can he make it back-to-back sprint podiums for the 1st time in his career? Let's get the thoughts of Monster Energy Yamaha boss Maio Meregali, who joins Jack.
Yeah, once again, Fabio doing the business on Saturday morning. Maio, recent weeks have shown that that it's been more of a challenge to get the job done in the sprint and in the Grand Prix, but with limited dry track time, with plenty of grip from the surface, is the confidence we can see Fabio on the podium?
It's very, in my opinion, it's very difficult for everybody to have a real forecast how the race can go, because we only had a dry session this morning, and unfortunately all the data we gathered 2 weeks ago were in different track conditions. So we hope that the tire choice has been the good one, and then it's really up to him.
Are you going medium or soft rear?
Medium.
What's the thinking behind that?
Sorry?
What's the thinking there?
The feeling that they had, the drop that they had with the soft one. So it's according to what we were able to gather, it might be, I mean, maybe the best for us.
Thanks, Mario. Good luck.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to Mario Meregali. Here comes Fabio Quartararo then. Leaving it as late as possible to get to the grid. It certainly feels like some of the hottest conditions we've had at the Grand Prix weekend so far. When we first pitched up in Brno on Monday, straight after a 5-hour drive from the Sachsenring, the temperature was into the 30s. It's a bit cooler. There's quite a lot of cloud cover circulating overhead. Thankfully, it's not going to drop any rain on this 10-lap sprint. We just saw there, Jorge Martin. I wonder if there are just a few butterflies and nerves for Martin. Of course, he's so raw in terms of race experience on the factory Aprilia. Keep an eye on him from the back of row 4.
And keep an eye on Marco Bezzecchi, his teammate, from the front of row 2. When he went off into the gravel trap at the first corner late in Q2, he must have feared that he was going to drop quite a long way down the grid. Although, because the yellow flags were out for so long, it ended up saving him to a certain extent. And of course, we've so often seen Bezzecchi perform better, as an Aprilia as a collective perform better in the sprints and in the Grand Prix than they generally do in qualifying. He's often said, just give me a grid position and I could do some serious damage from there. So let's see what Bez can do from the front of row 2.
Jorge Martin's lone finish in 2025 was a 16th place over the line in the Qatar sprint. What can he offer over the course of 10 laps coming up shortly? Alex Marquez then has changed. He's gone from the soft to the medium rear tyre. So Alex also trying to get maybe a bit of information for the 21-lap Grand Prix of Czechia here tomorrow. So we welcome back. It's great to have him back, isn't it? Jorge Martin, the world champion. Marco Bezzecchi may be carrying the best hopes of a sprint podium this afternoon as far as Aprilia are concerned. He goes from 4th. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Paolo Bonora, who joins Jack.
Yeah, it's been a great run for Bez of late. It could have been 4 straight podiums if it wasn't for that late crash at the Sachsenring, and another good job in qualifying puts him in a strong position, Paolo.
Yeah, for sure, we have to keep this momentum. The great job that Marco Bezzecchi did in the last races was unbelievable. So he bring a new bike for Jorge. He developed a lot, and Jorge as well joined us yesterday. He felt immediately that there is an improvement. We are happy about this situation. At the moment, we have 2 very strong and talented riders inside the garage that can help each other. So, very positive mood, and we will see. We will see after this sprint, but in particular after the long race distance, what can Jorge feel, in particular with his physical situation, and yeah. Take his time in a very calm way and wait at least 3 races to see him again with his full potential.
We just heard from Yamaha. They're going with the medium rear. Looks like Alex Marquez, medium rear. What are you guys doing?
Yes, we are now evaluating because since this morning it was expected to use the soft, but with this sun condition, with this hot temperature on the tarmac, we are evaluating also the medium one.
Haven't made a decision yet then?
Not yet at all.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Nice try, Jack, nice try. Will Mark and Alex Marquez keep their momentum rolling and extend what is a brilliant sprint sequence, a brilliant sprint streak? They are the only 2 winners and the only point scorers in every sprint so far this year. We know Alex then did move up to the medium rear tyre, so did Pedro Acosta on the factory KTM. I love that, the self-styled, the self-proclaimed Czech adrenaline factory. Well, this is a track that really does get the adrenaline flowing. Johan Zarco looked at one stage like he might be able to put the LCR Honda into the top 6 on the grid late on in Q2 when he crashed right at the end of play at turn 13, just moments before Marc Marquez joined him in that 13 gravel trap. The consequence of that for the Frenchman was he starts at the back of the 3rd row in 9th place.
Yeah, so as you can see now from the overhead shot, as Jack pointed out, long run to turn 1, but then a long run out of 2, which is that little left kink out of turn 1 down to 3, so plenty of overtaking opportunities in the first sector of this sprint. It might take quite some time for this all to settle down. Surely Marc Marquez is going to attack very much from the beginning, and Pecco Bagnaia will be desperate to maintain that track position. Marco Bezzecchi, we're informed from Jack, is going for the soft rear tyre. Joan Mir on the 2nd row, he's gone across to the medium, which I think just leaves Bez on the top 5 positions on the grid on that soft rear tyre, so he could potentially have an advantage early on, but need to manage the longer this 10-lap sprint unfolds.
Yeah, you feel a lot of riders that are plumping for the medium. They've also got one eye very much on the 21-lap Grand Prix tomorrow. Be hard-pressed to feel that anybody in what are we expecting to be hotter conditions tomorrow afternoon that's going to gamble on running the soft rear tyre over the 21 laps. So a bit of a fact-finding mission as well in this sprint coming up shortly. Pecco Bagnaia then on the front row of the grid, the front position on the grid for the first time since the Solidarity Grand Prix at the end of 2024. Alongside him, though, Marc Marquez, who's always a fast starter on the factory Ducati. There is Joan Mir, 2020 MotoGP world champion. There's his view of the pole sitter at Bagnaia. Mir, well, he just needs a bit of luck, doesn't he? 7 Grand Prix DNFs so far in the opening 11 Grand Prix. Taken out last Sunday by Ayagura when he was comfortably running inside the top 10 in the Sachsenring. Ploughed into Fermin Aldeguer's crashed Gresini Ducati over in Assen. So can he capitalise and get some lady luck going his way from that excellent 5th place on the grid?
So the sprint is 5 minutes from getting underway, 3 minutes to the warm-up lap getting underway as the safety car pulls away. Ducati, Yamaha on your front row, Aprilia, Honda, Aprilia on your 2nd row. First of the KTMs is Pedro Acosta, who you can see just on the front of row 3 there, and of course the reigning world champion returning to action, of course looking to open his points account for the season, but seeing the checkered flag will be a success for him.
So it's a level playing field in terms of Michelin tyre choice on the front row. Everybody, Bagnaia, Marquez and Quartararo, medium front, medium rear tyre. Marc Marquez looking to increase his 83-point world championship lead. He goes from 2nd, already victorious in 10 of our 11 opening sprints so far in 2025. His first pole position of 2025, though, goes the way of Pecco Bagnaia. He led Q1 and Q2. Can he lead the sprint here in Brno?